Welcome back. So we continue our coverage of the EFF's 11th anniversary, and we're now joined by lecturer at Rhodes University, Asiphe Mxalasi, just to give us her view on the progression of the economic freedom fighters over the past 11 years. And of course, one of the discussions we certainly wanted to have, Asiphe, is where the EFF sits in how it's structured its leadership, particularly where gender issues are concerned, right? So talk to us a little bit about what you make of the leadership structure of the economic freedom fighters, and where changes certainly can and should take place.
Thank you very much for having me, Naledi, and a very good morning to everyone. As the EFF commemorates their 11th anniversary, in anticipation, as you have discussed on the December election conference, there is a little bit of optimism, particularly when it comes to the leaders' address, looking at how the party has performed, particularly in the 29th of May election. So one thing that I would like to start us off in terms of the gender discussion and gender parity in women politics in the EFF is the recent contribution by Honorable Naledi, which made a significant and important contribution highlighting the unresolved critical issues in South Africa in response to the recent presidential speech. So when discussing the participation of women in politics, particularly in the EFF, it is imperative to shift away from viewing, their access to political institutions and political leadership solely through the lens of meeting party quota requirements, but importantly, to look at the reflection of the contribution and political challenges that are faced by women in predominantly male-dominated political landscapes, and that is political parties, emphasizing their efforts to challenge traditional gender norms and navigating constant scrutiny of their leadership and actively contributing to the political progress of South Africa. So what we see in political parties like the ANC and the EFF is the growth in terms of gender quota in political leadership. But particularly, does that gender growth, especially including women in political parties, equate to their voices being heard? What's happening in the politics in terms of the male-dominated space that is in political parties? And also the fact that in even local leadership, do we see women taking particularly positions in local government from the EFF side? So those are the things that we need to look at beyond the gender quota, and that is where the discussion of gender equality is.
Yeah, of course, you touch, Asiphe, on the issue around Naledi Chirwa, and I think that also because it was in the run-up to the elections, there was a sense that I suppose even that discussion around how she had, gone back to work just days after giving birth, and, a lot of the issues around gender equality in the workplace coming up to the fore, but the leader of the party essentially coming out and saying that this is a distraction, that they need to be focusing on the campaigning. But what do you think that has done, if at all, to the way people view the party and how it looks at women within its ranks? So I'm talking about whether or not these matters and these issues even matter to the electorate.
They actually do matter, because the people who are registered, particularly young people, incorporate young women as well. And we often see this in the political space, and we see it even in movements itself, where gender is often othered, that we need to focus on other things and gender follows, forgetting the intersectionality of key issues, that actually being a woman is not only that identity, but it encompasses all the identities that are mostly affected by the system. So people are looking at how do you then preach gender equality policies when in fact within the parties those things are not looked at in terms of its entirety. And what we see in political leaders, which are women in spaces, is the expectation of performativity, where we need to perform masculinity in order to be heard, where we need to put aside the things that make us whole, the things that we navigate as women in order to be seen as strong. And this is the scrutiny that I speak about, where there is a high surveillance of political leaders who are women, not only in South Africa, globally, way, where there is surveillance of performance often hidden under the whole disguise of accountability. And perhaps that is why Naledi had to go back to work, because she knew that this scrutiny that will be following in terms of her leadership. But in essence, she's quite actually good at her work, and her contribution in the EFF is much more broader than what we've recently seen in history.
Yeah, they just contested their third national elections, and of course, not the best showing for the economic freedom fighters. The MK party, for instance, overtaking them as the third largest party in the country. I mean, what is it that you think the EFF needs to do right now to, I suppose, to turn its fortunes around?
There has been, we cannot deny the rapid growth of the EFF, becoming the third party in South Africa, the third biggest party in South Africa by 2023, achieving a decade of actually young people's leadership. That has been their growth, and that has been their greatest achievement. But also there's a large following from young people that makes up the supporters and the voters of the EFF, which is something that they need to look forward to as they go back to the ground, to talk to young people and see the critical issues that young people wish the party could actually raise. What we have seen, though, of the party in the 2024 elections revealed a surprising decline of voter turnout. This decline can be attributed in many issues, and particularly the emergence of the new political formations that have attracted, voters from established parties. But additionally, the shift in the party's political manifesto in 2014 has faced a huge criticism from young people who actually constitute a significant number of portion of supporters. So for the party to focus on getting more supporting and getting more voters, it is to actually go back and reflect in the reform of its manifesto, its political focus, as well as focusing on service delivery, which is one of the things that political parties are currently not focusing on in the GNU, but mostly they are focusing on the political party imaging, which is critical. But what about service delivery? What's happening there? And the EFF used to do that quite a lot when having discussions and engagements with communities.
Yeah, and of course, one of the things that we heard from them this morning is that now that is their intention to really go down to local level and look at their branches and ensure that those branches are strong. And I wonder if you think they'll be quite successful at doing that. But there is also this idea that the EFF, of course, is a breakaway of the ANC, and many people understand it to be that way. The future for a lot of breakaway parties, though, politically has not always been very, very bright, right? So one wonders if this could be the decline of the EFF that we are seeing right now. Would you agree with that?
For a lot of political parties, particularly those that have formed leading to the 2024 elections, they are a breakaway from the major political parties. And that actually means there will be a decline in terms of support. But also, we come from a country that has got a vast political options from communities. And based on the service delivery, based on the engagements by political parties, as you were mentioning, that perhaps the economic freedom fighters should go back to the community. It shifts the idea of how communities want to politically participate, and it shifts the idea of voting, as we have seen with the leadership party, where the accountability came from the voting, that the people of South Africa, the communities, actually took power out from those political parties. I don't think there's a significant drop that the EFF would actually experience more than it has, because the people always look for alternative political parties to vote for, other than the leadership political party, which is currently failing them in service delivery. But we do actually see a shift in terms of political mindset, in terms of the political culture in communities, based on how much political parties actually go to engage the communities, to remind the communities about the policies that they are actually promising in terms of practice. And this is something that we didn't see much during the campaigning of 2024. And that is why we have the election results that we have now, because communities use actually the experiences that they've had on service delivery, the economic status of the country, looking at which particular political party can serve their needs best.
Yeah, let me ask you this before I let you go. Mobile Madlala, of course, our reporter on the ground, even bringing this up with the leadership of the EFF, is the controversy certainly around the economic freedom fighters. At the moment, VBS are very much an issue that they're really needing to be dealing with. The allegations of VBS corruption against Floyd Shivambu and Julius Malema, the leadership of the party. How do they maneuver that, and does that chip away at the voter?
We cannot deny the fact that, the economic freedom fighters has faced numerous legal challenges and corruption allegations as well, and some which they have been acquitted of in terms of various charges, establishing a perception in the community that they operate with impunity. But despite this, the party has demonstrated, a strong legal defense and has experienced losses in critical cases as well, indicating accountability within our legal system. What is currently in their books, as you are mentioning, the recent VBS scandal, is particularly driven by the AfriForum. However, we all know that, the saddest part about the prosecution of political leaders for corruption in South Africa is that it is often uncertain, leading to limited consequences for such scandal on the political landscape. So these incidences, they just become, a frequent conversation of debates amongst political parties, trying to bash a political imaging within the space. But not much is actually attributed to accountability or also looking at the legal system in place. Now, what we see with the VPS as well has affected the EFF significantly as we're looking at its power in the metros, where the ANC is relooking its coalition relationship with the party. And this could have a significant impact on the EFF support as well as trust in the community, because when the EFF came into power, it was all about to hold accountability the ANC leaders who have been involved in corruption.